All right, now that I have the right assignment for the right question, I am going to create my, let's see, this is week 6, so I need a week 6 folder. You can see I'm not keeping up with my assignments. I'm a week behind. I don't know. I'm gonna have to talk to the instructor about that. I'm going to right click on week 6. In Windows 11, I have to do show more options and open with code. To this point, it's not been very important that you open up the folder. As we keep going with functions and things, it's going to become more important because you will find when we have more than one file in a program, it's not going to find it. So make sure you get a good habit of starting to do this if you haven't already. So this is a single file program, so it doesn't really matter, but call this joke.py. Sounds good. Now this is a program where you have to find your own joke. You cannot use my how many programmers does it take to change a light bulb, and I enjoy this assignment because it's good for making functions, and it's also very funny for me to see what kind of jokes people come up with. I always have a good laugh with this one. So it's very important to entertain the instructor. So I give you a to-do, which you can select out of your PDF. If you're looking at I'm moving things to GitHub. I haven't moved this one to GitHub because I haven't changed it yet. But in GitHub, you may have to download it before you can copy and paste. Right now, I think this one is in Blackboard. But eventually I'm going to go to everything in GitHub because Blackboard is such a pain in the Watusi to update things. And I'm creating a bunch of videos on YouTube and attaching my tutorials to it. So now with GitHub, I'll have one place to store everything. So we want to copy this because this has half the program already planned out for you. I mean, it has the program planned out. It's just a matter of how do we fill in the pieces? Well, there's our main function. We're going to call the setup function. We're going to call the press function, the punchline function. Well, the first thing we have to do is define a function. How do we define a function? What's the keyword in Python to define a function? Did I say that right? Define a function. What is it? What's the keyword? Did you have it? No? Somebody be brave. Define. Def. Def is said we're defining something. Doesn't mean anything's going to run. We're defining it so Python knows about it. So our function is going to be called setup. This is the setup for the joke. We need a parenthesis and a colon. That is called the signature or whatever you want to call it. It's this is my function. It is named setup. So this is a chunk of code all by itself. What do we want to do in this function? It says we want to print the joke setup. There's my joke. I don't know what the punchline is going to be because I just varied a very popular traditional joke. That's all our function is going to do is print the joke setup. So the setup is the beginning of a 2-part joke. So why did the chicken run across the road? I have no idea because I can't think of anything funny to go with that. Because coyotes were following it, I have no idea. So far, so good. That's all this is doing is printing out the setup. And then we're going to print the joke punchline, which is, hopefully I can come up with something funnier. Let's see. Because it couldn't walk. Yeah, this is not a very funny joke. Good joke, right? We've defined a function called setup. We've defined a function called punchline. We've defined a function called main. Anytime something is defined, Python always starts at the top of the program when it's interpreting it or compiling it or whatever you want to think of what it's doing, running it. It looks at this definition and says, oh, you have defined this for me. I need to remember this. That's it. It doesn't do anything with the code inside. And then it comes here and it says, oh, I need to remember that inside this setup function, you want me to print. Oh, I need to remember that you want to print inside this function. So when you define a function to Python, it just goes by and says, okay, I need to remember this. Let's move on. It doesn't actually do anything with the function until you do what's called a function call. So main is when you are calling the function. That's the term that's used. You could call it a function call is what everybody calls it, but you're calling the function to make it run. So the code flows from the top. Oh, there's my main, there's my setup, there's my to-do. Oh, finally, I have something I can do, Python says. I can run the main function. So then Python goes up here and says, okay, well, nothing's happening here. Oh, I'm supposed to press the enter key to see the punchline and there's nothing else to do. Then it comes back to here and it's done. So this is the function call of main. How would we call the function setup? What would we put in here to call the setup function? Okay, so someone first said, I won't mention her name is Hope, said that, well, you put print in here. And I said, well, that's a good start, you know. Print, notice it looks just like this, doesn't it? Input looks just like this. It has little parentheses. So all these things we've been using are functions. We've been calling them all along. We just didn't know that's what they were. But these are built into Python, where this one isn't. This is one we created. But you do the same thing. So then Hope did come up with the right answer. You would say setup. Python will look at this and it'll look first in the program and say, oh, this is what you want me to do. It zips down there, does everything inside the function. Once it's done, it comes back to, you can think of it as that comes to the end of this function call. It goes down to here, executes that. How do we call the punchline function? Somebody besides Hope, because she already knows the answer. How do we call the punchline function? Hope already passed the class for today. She can go home. Uh-oh, she couldn't keep her mouth shut. She just couldn't wait any longer. Punchline. But you always have to put the little parentheses to match what we've defined. And putting the parentheses in front of it and the def, these are all rules of how Python defines functions, which is kind of redundant, but just that's the rules. So what do you think? Is this going to work? It will. Let's run it. Why did the chicken run across the road? Well, it's not going to do anything until I press enter because it couldn't walk. Yeah, I need a better joke. This is one we've not done before. If you do an input and you don't assign the variable to anything and you just say press enter to see the punchline, you're pressing the enter key. It has nothing else to do. It's just going to move to the next line. So that's a handy little trick. Now, I'm going to go to another program on the web that allows us to see what's going on with this program internally. Python anywhere? No. I think that's it. Oh, no, that's not it. Just a second here. I can't remember what it is. I'll blame it on the code. My brain was not working. But PythonTutor.com allows us to take 3 or 4 programming languages and see what's literally happening with each step. So it's very handy. I don't think, apparently I haven't used it yet in this class. Yeah, well, we need to put in different code here than what's in there. All right, so when you edit the It says here, edit code, and I do not need AI help, but I am going to edit the code. So I'm going to plop this guy, Control A to select it, Control C to copy. And you can do this with any Python code or Java or whatever. I'm going to put it in there, and then I'm going to visualize the execution. All right, well, nothing's happened. That's because I need to step through my code. This is the entrance point to our program, right? That's our first line. So we go next. Notice what it does. Does it do anything? No. It's just noticing that, oh yeah, there's a main function. I better keep track of that. That's what it's doing. It says, oh, there's a setup function. I better keep track of that guy. Nothing executes at this point. And now I have my punchline function. So these guys are all in Python's memory. It's remembering that they're there, but it doesn't execute them yet. Now we have our function call. There it is. Now we're running things. So this is just memory where it's remembering. This is where something is running. We're now running the main function. Well, let's go into the main function. We hit the setup. Once we get past the setup, then it'll show what the setup, oh, there it is. See, the setup is running. See how we went from main to setup. We're going to execute setup. There we go. I thought it would print things out. I must have the wrong setting. Or maybe it doesn't print until the next one. Oh yeah, there it is. So this is always like a step. The execution happens after the arrow moves. So here I do have to press enter, but I don't actually press anything. And this guy, I submit whatever I typed in there. Now notice that had the setup function was down here, then it did all this, then it went back to here. And as soon as I submitted it, this function was thrown away. It's still in memory, but it's not in the place where Python works and runs things. It can use it again if it wants. We could run setup 50 times if we wanted. It's just not currently being used. Now let's see what happens next. Oh, there's our punchline function jumped up in there, is ready to do something. There it is. Because it couldn't walk, right? Executed it. It always goes back to wherever it started from, and then it moves to the next line. And the next line is nothing, right? So what do you think it's going to do at this point? What do you think? Is there anything left the program can execute? The answer would be no. Notice everything disappears. And actually, this isn't here either anymore because when the program's done, everything gets garbage collected and thrown away. So let's go through that one more time just to show how it works. I'm going to go back to first. So we're keeping track of this is where the code is executed. This is just stuff that Python is remembering that it knows about. Maybe need to make this a little smaller because not everything is fitting. There we go. That's better. So it knows that we have a main function. It knows we have a setup function. We knows we have a punchline function. So it's just storing this over here. It's not executing it yet. Now we're going down and we're executing the main function. It sees the setup and says, oh, I need to bring this in from over here and actually do something with it. Now I'm going to print and see that it printed. It said, why did the chicken cross the road? So this has been executed. Notice that it disappears as soon as it's no longer needed. We don't need it to be executed. It's already executed. It did its job. We throw it away. Python still knows about it. It can bring it back again if you want, but it's not currently part of our running program. And we click next. Oh, we have to press enter, except if you press enter up here, it's not going to work. So you have to go down here, and where's the submit button? Oh, I have to do one more click. Where's my submit button now? Oh, it jumped right by my submit button for some reason this time. Okay. Anyway, I should have pressed enter to move next, because then it goes to Punchline. And then it prints. And you know what's going to happen next? We're at the end of the function. We've done our thing. What's going to happen to Punchline? Let me go to the next. It's done. We're finished. So Python knows these exist. This you can think of as the execution stack. What's on here, we're currently executing and running. Once we're done with Punchline, it gets taken out of the stack, so to speak, and it's no longer being used. We go to here. All we have left now is the main. We're at the end of main. The program ends, which actually this all gets thrown away too, but for purposes of illustration, they leave it here. So this is kind of a handy thing I need to remember to use more often, because it shows you what exactly is going inside the program. And that's what's happening. That's what a function allows us to do. So if we wanted to print setup 25 times, how would we do that? How would we do setup more than once? We would call the function again. If we want to have a punchline up here, we can call the function up here. We can call a function as many times as we wish. It's not very useful in this program because the function does the same thing every time we run it. But as we go, we'll work on functions where it'll change every time we run it. But we can run this as many times as we want. Yeah, look at all those guys jumping around. And we get another one, and we get another one. That's jumping around there. Yeah, we can. Functions are our first step to what's called, what I would call is reusable code. Meaning, if you have the wet solution, that means we enjoy typing, your program will be 50 miles long. My code program will have several functions that repeat themselves and I'm done. So functions allow us to have repeatable code that's consistent. We don't end up with one big long line of stuff. We just have to fix one thing at a time and get it to work. We can work in little pieces now. So functions are very helpful. Functions are our friend.